80s sci-fi anime, sleek metal spaceships, neon blue all over the damn place. These are the things that sustain me. This is where I live. Sonic Team blessed us with Phantasy Star Online in the year 2000, and it's one of the first proper online RPGs for consoles. Now, I wouldn't know about any of that myself because I played it offline, but let me tell you, it's still an absolute treat for the eyes and ears. And it's worth mentioning that if you're new to the series, this makes for a great jumping on point, since it's a pretty hard reboot and doesn't require any prior knowledge about the first 4 mainline entries. This particular one starts with a character creation menu, and once we decide whether we want to be a Hunawial, Rakasial, or any other class with an equally sensible name, we get dropped straight into the action here in the Principal. This is our cool control room for the game, and it's full of scientists and human council type people who are all very interested in unearthing the secrets of this newly discovered planet, Ragol. Essentially, our home planet is no longer habitable, and so we're looking for a new place to chill. Although, since this spaceship, Pioneer 2, is essentially a floating cyberpunk city full of dope neon buildings and flying cars, I don't quite know why we would ever want to leave. But for some reason we do. Resource scarcity, I guess. Also, Pioneer 1, which went ahead of us to scout the planet, has gone missing, and most notably, the legendary Red Ring Rico, who was leading the scout party, is nowhere to be seen. Everyone is all very sad that she's MIA, so guessing she must be pretty based, and that there comprises our main mission. Explore the planet, report back on the flora and fauna, and try to find Red Ring Rico. Along the way, we'll join the Hunters Guild and pick up a ton of missions, meeting all sorts of different folk. Some of whom want to help and some who want to exploit the prime real estate of this planet. And there's even a Burning Rangers mission if you have the relevant Dreamcast DLC. Now that story's nice and all, but it's pretty basic and sparse. It just provides us with a loose framework and a reason why we're here. What else we got going on? The art direction is sublime and conjures everything from the pod houses of Dragon Ball to the cyber cities of Akira to the badass weapons and armour of Venus Wars. All the zones are fairly linear and corridor based, but you don't really feel it since so much love was put into the visuals. For instance, the imaginatively titled Forest 1 isn't just a forest. It has these little speeder bikes and force field gates in a residential area with the super clean alabaster flooring and the aforementioned Dragon Ball buildings. It's extremely comfy and inviting even with all the boomers hanging around. The zones are very varied too and follow a basic theme of digging deep into the core of the planet. From the lush forest with its towers and houses, we then venture into the volcanic caves beneath the earth, which brings with it a whole new host of monsters to fight. Once we're done there, we get to easily the most aesthetically pleasing area of the game, the mines, with all the cyber blue a Dreamcast enjoyer could hope for, and looking absolutely nothing whatsoever like a mine. Huge credit to Thea9 3D for this beautiful VR footage, by the way. If you guys want to see more of this kind of stuff, not just for PSO but for many classic games, I have dropped a link to their channel in the description, and so go show them some love because they are truly doing God's work. As you've likely noticed by this point, the soundtrack for this game is an all-out bop. It has that big proggy synth stuff a la Jeff Wayne, Jean-Michel Jarre, etc, and it sets a neat futuristic feel. It's enormously spacious, very clean, which is something that's also true of the game itself. So here's the big question, I suppose. How does it play? I won't lie to you. Much like Morrowind, another favourite RPG of mine, the world is beautiful and it's a joy to explore, but the combat is pretty rough. I think that has to do with the limitations of this being an early online game. They had to account for a lot of traffic on the servers and so had to keep things pretty streamlined and basic with the fighting. In principle, this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but the 3-hit combo you will invariably resort to with your chosen weapon eventually loses some of its luster. We get a few cool spells to break things up a bit, but we're not exactly approaching the Batman Arkham level of fluid action. I will say that the customizable inventory was pretty ahead of its time though. In modern games we take hotkey and stuff for granted, but this was pretty nifty for 2000. These big icons here in the bottom right correspond to your bottom 3 face buttons, and then if you hold the R trigger down it switches over to another tab which is also customizable. It's just nice quality of life stuff. Which is more than I can say for the bosses. These motherfuckers are merciless. They aren't necessarily tricky in a Dark Souls sort of a way, but they're just mega damage sponges. Again, I suspect that it's because they were intended to be treated as raid encounters for you and your online party, but as a single player encountering these bastards offline, they just take ages to clear. Whereas once I had learned Ornstein and Smo's patterns, I could have them dead within a few minutes. It doesn't matter how much I study Deroli, he will always have 6,000 hit points. So my options are grind for weapons or grind out the encounter. It doesn't ruin the overall fun by any means, since there are only 4 boss encounters in the base game, but it's definitely worth being apprised of. This is Sonic Team in their prime. The Sonic team who had just given us Burning Rangers and Sonic Adventure. Both games with super fun movement mechanics. You don't get that here. In itself, that isn't really a major blow since the landscapes are fairly flat and linear, no platforming is actually needed, but it would have been nice to have some variety. Since I've already referenced it, in Morrowind you could vary up your traversal by crouching for the sneaky times or levitating for the wizard times and all sorts of other fun stuff. Phantasy Star Online keeps it simple with just walk and run, which again I'm guessing is something to do with the limitations of online gaming at the time, but they improved massively upon this element in the latest entry, PSO2 New Genesis, which for the life of me I don't really know why we're not just calling PSO3, since it is a totally separate game from PSO2 with different characters, locations, story, mechanics. Now in this one we really are focusing on cool flashy fights a la modern Final Fantasy titles, and like I say, it outclasses the original PSO in that regard, because now battling the baddies actually feels fun, and the movement and traversal is super slick too. You got the hovering, the sprinting, the double jumping, the wall jumping, the dodges. You're parkouring all over this bitch. Take a look at this area here. Not only does it look so futuristic that I busted nut up on entry, but also it has this cool timed race to the end thingy going on where your only enemy is the environment. Deep statement. So, it's all about learning those tricky jumps and looking like a sci-fi ninja badass. Honestly, it feels cool as fuck. Oh god, is that how I think it is? New Genesis is still a super beautiful game as you'd expect, and some of the areas do really capture that PSO vibe, like this command center thingy here or these ornate vistas over here. Although, sad to say, a good deal of the areas in this one do just feel like generic open world JRPG stuff, and I guess that's just the times we're living in. I probably won't ever do a full review of this one since it didn't really grab me as much as the original, but it did feel pertinent to mention it here as part of the legacy conversation, and I could definitely recommend it based on the merits that I've mentioned already. But back to PSO, the point I am making is that I personally play games for a variety of reasons, and most often it is to trundle around and take in the vibe. And so even though the mechanics are pretty clunky, I am still riding hard because of said vibe. Adding to this vibe and imbuing this world with even more life are the quests. They are limited to fairly basic stuff, fetch, escort, talk, but every single one of them has charm and personality and helps to build the world. Take a look at this one here where we're sent to recover a missing mag, these little flying robot guys by my shoulders. And instead we meet this sympathetic android who can communicate with the mags, and she wants to look after them. It's a super sweet mission where we can learn a bit of lore and share some cute character moments. And then we got this one, where we meet this plucky young journalist Noel who believes the government are suppressing the truth about what's really happening on Ragal. She wants to get down there and check it out herself. And so we escort her through the forest and she sees all the monsters and janked up machinery and the fact that a lot of good people are dead, and we kinda send her into an existential crisis. Wholesome and good world building. But the main quest is all about tracking down this Red Ring Rico character. And that essentially does just boil down to clearing each zone in order and then a boss at the end of each area. It's not the most riveting thing you're ever going to do single player, but I have no doubt it's all good fun if you have some online buds to battle the bads with you. You also learn about the local animals, the planet, and the general unrest that's going on by finding Rico's logs as you explore. Before we get into any final thoughts here, what say we skate all the way back to 1987 and chill out with Alice on the Sega Master System. That's right, it's Phantasy Star 1. And before I say anything else, listen to this fucking bop. Oh yeah, that's the stuff. And despite its humble 8-bit format, this game looks clean as all heck too. The overworld may be a little bit sparse, but take a look at these pod towns. How about the thrill of these first-person dungeons? Now I know that looks like a 1996 Windows screensaver, but please remember that this was 1987, predating Doom by quite a bit. Being able to explore a pseudo 3D space in first person and having it rendered so goddamn cleanly must have really been a trip at the time. I only got round to the original game this year and even I was surprised. A little bit of story here for you then. You are Alice Lansdale and you swear to avenge your brother Nero, who's been put to death by the evil King Lashik, this Death Adder looking motherfucker over here. And that's basically it. Now you gotta troll the towns, forests, dungeons, pick up a few homies and start your interplanetary revolution. Pretty dope. Also, anytime you get important plot exposition, such as meeting a new character or whatever, you get these beautiful 80s anime looking panels, and I live for it. The first buddy you're going to get here is Meow, this adorable talking cat thingy, and then we find Odin, this absolute Chad Space Ranger dude. A lot of the game is mainly just grinding, buying upgrades and chatting to townspeople, real RPG 101 shit, but it feels good and satisfying. Despite the sheer amount of random encounters, I actually find this a very relaxing game, and I would recommend it as something you could play at the end of a hard day if you want to chill out. It has some difficult enemy encounters and such, but the music and the presentation are all very soothing. You even get to jump onto a spaceship within the first hour of gameplay, which is nuts when I think about modern games where the tutorial takes you more than an hour. Looking at you, Kojima. I will say that if you're planning on checking this game out, please make sure you get the version with the FM sound, because otherwise, instead of the beautiful lush tunes you've been hearing, you're gonna get this. Ouch. Please do not. On the basis of this video, I am very tempted to say that I love the Phantasy Star franchise, because I certainly do love PSO and the original Master System game. However, it's a big sprawling series with a lot of entries, so I'm going to hold my tongue for now until we get some more reviews under our belt. But next up, I'm pretty interested to check out Phantasy Star Zero for the Nintendo DS and Phantasy Star Universe for the PS2, since both of those kinda took cues from the Dreamcast effort and ran in different directions with it. But for now, my friends, that's about all from me. Take it easy, please like, subscribe, etc., and stay fantastic.